Asterisk, they ignored my warnings then. My son showed the time-stamped photos he took. I paced the courtroom floor the moment I stepped through the double doors. I heard the judge's gavel echo like thunder in my chest. I clutched the folder close. To my heart, I felt my son's trembling voice replay in my mind. "Mom, look at the date, look at the time." I tilted my head as the prosecutor sneered, certain I was hysterical. I watched my ex-spouse smirk from across the aisle. I knew the photos in my hand would change everything. I swallowed hard. Then I waited. I waited for the moment my evidence would speak louder than their lies. I froze as silence fell over the courtroom. I couldn't breathe. Then I lifted the folder. Then I felt every eye turn to me. Then, what happened next would decide our fate. Asterisk, asterisk, I remember that morning with surgical clarity. I sat at our battered oak kitchen table, sipping lukewarm coffee. I ran my fingers over the worn photo of our family, my son's bright grin beside my own hopeful smile. I worked as an elementary school counselor, guiding children through scraped knees and broken hearts. I felt fulfilled in a way I'd never known before becoming a mother. I cherished the quiet hum of our small suburban home, the hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the wall clock, the soft footsteps of my son padding down the hall. I woke every day at 5:30 a.m. I brewed coffee. I prepped my notes for the day's group sessions. I packed my son's lunch tuna sandwich, grapes, a homemade cookie cooled on a rack. I kissed his forehead before he boarded the school bus. I arrived at work just as the sun's first rays slipped beneath the blinds. I greeted each child by name. I prided myself on remembering the tiniest details, favorite colors, pet peeves, dreams whispered during tear-stained afternoons. I felt competent. I felt safe. I thought our life was normal. I met my ex-spouse, Daniel, at a teacher's workshop. 5 years ago, I was drawn to his easy laugh and confident stride. I admired how he listened, truly listened, when I spoke about my aspirations. I believed he was my partner in every sense. I believed we'd build a life rooted in trust and mutual respect. I married him 2 years later on a crisp autumn afternoon. I wore my mother's veil. I walked down the aisle with tears of joy. I vowed to honor and cherish. I meant every word. I gave birth to our son, Lucas, 18 months after our wedding. I held him against my chest as he cried his first breath. I memorized every curve of his tiny fist. I watched him grow from a gurgling infant into a curious boy who asked 1,000 questions a day. I listened as he described imaginary creatures that danced in the attic and secret treasure buried beneath the rosebush. I listened because I believed in his wonder. I believed in magic. I started noticing changes 6 months ago. I noticed the way Daniel's eyes narrowed when Lucas asked too many questions. I noticed how he dismissed my concerns as overreactions. I noticed the way he rearranged our son's drawings on the fridge, slanting them at odd angles, as if to rewrite our reality. I noticed late-night hushed phone calls in the pantry, muffled voices and the clink of ice against glass. I noticed a heaviness settle in my chest, a warning siren that I couldn't silence. I confided in my sister, Marisol. I described the coldness in Daniel's smile. I described the fear swirling in my son's eyes. I begged her to believe me. I begged her to stand by my side if I ever had to fight. I thought she would. I thought I had allies. I thought that was enough. I filed the initial motion 2 weeks ago. I listed my concerns: emotional manipulation, gaslighting, the creeping dread that something worse was coming. I attached every journal entry, every recorded voicemail, every scribbled note Lucas pressed into my palm. I watched the clerk stamp my papers received. I felt a glimmer of hope. I thought justice would come quickly. I was wrong. I sat before the judge today, clutching the very same folder, my hands shaking so badly I was afraid I'd drop it. I watched Daniel's lawyer stand and paint me as an unstable, mothery, emotional, unpredictable, unfit. I bit my lip to stop my tears. I took a deep breath and steadied my voice. I reminded myself why I was here. I reminded myself of Lucas's words. "Mom, you promised to keep me safe." I looked up at the judge. I saw a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. I felt my heart hammering in my throat. I whispered a silent plea. "Please, let them see the truth." And then I stood, ready to present the proof that would shatter their lies. Asterisk, asterisk. I watched the courtroom lights bounce off the polished oak surface as I opened my folder. I felt the weight of every accusation Daniel's lawyer had hurled at me only moments ago. I swallowed and touched the edge of a photo. I felt the grainy paper press into my fingertips. I remembered the day Lucas snapped these images. I woke to the first real sign of control 3 months ago. I found my planner, rearranged my husband's neat script, crossing out my counseling sessions. I saw family dinner no, friends allowed, scrawled where my book club meeting had once been. I blinked at the page. Why would he do that? I asked myself. I tore out the sheet and crumpled it in my fist. I confronted him in our dim kitchen. I felt the light of the overhead bulb catch in the steam rising from my coffee. I felt my voice tremble. I asked, "Why did you change my plans?" I saw his lips curl in that practiced smile. I saw the way his eyes cooled. Then he said, "You're too busy. I just want you to rest." I believed him for a moment. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to trust his explanation. I wanted peace. Then came the small criticisms. I poured wine for dinner one evening. I glanced up to find Daniel watching me from across the table. I felt the rim of the glass slip under my fingers. I heard his quiet voice, "You're clumsy, aren't you?" I froze. I tasted burgundy on my tongue. I pressed my lips together. I felt a dull ache as he listed every mistake I'd made that week: missed deadline at work, burnt toast that morning, socks left on the living room floor. I nodded and apologized. I felt the color drain from my cheeks. I felt my confidence slip through my fingers like sand. I noticed the way he monitored my calls. I noticed his name flashing on my caller ID minutes after I spoke to my sister. I noticed him standing silently in the hallway, phone pressed to his ear, breathing shallow. I questioned my own sanity as my lunch appointments vanished from my calendar. I questioned my own judgment. I questioned my own memories. Am I imagining this? I wondered. I watched Lucas one afternoon as he tiptoed down the hallway, camera in hand. I felt my heart stutter. I saw his small face peek around the doorframe. I saw the way his eyes darted when he thought no one was watching. Then he raised the camera and snapped a photo of Daniel standing behind me in the laundry room, phone to his ear. I took the memory card with shaking hands. I promised myself I'd look later. I attended a parent-teacher conference next. I felt the tension coil in my shoulders when Daniel rudely spoke over the teacher, dismissing my concerns about Lucas's sudden anxiety at school. I felt a flush creep up my neck as he said, "She worries too much." I squeezed the folder. In my bag I squeezed until my knuckles turned white. I sensed the gaslighting grow bolder. I found my notes missing from my desk at work. I felt my pulse race when I realized the pages detailing Daniel's manipulations had vanished. I felt exposed. I felt isolated. Am I losing my mind? I asked no one. And then I found the voicemail. I replayed it in my car, parked outside the courthouse. I heard Daniel's voice, soft, menacing, telling someone, "She thinks she's smart. Let her think that." I heard my own name, my identity, turn into a weapon. I cradled my phone like a talisman. I arrived home late that night, to find the door unlocked. I felt my breath catch. I placed my hand on the handle and twisted gently. I stepped inside. I saw the living room light flicker. I saw the photos on the mantel, my wedding, Lucas's first step shaken, askew. I felt a knot tighten in my gut. I realized Daniel had been here. I realized Lucas must have been watching. I found him in his room clutching the memory card. I felt his arms wrap around me. I felt his small body tremble. I asked him what he saw. He pressed the card into my palm and whispered, "He's hiding things, Mom." I saw him hide them under the floorboard. I stared at Lucas's eyes and saw truth mirrored back at me. I felt my resolve sharpen. I felt anger mount. I felt fear ripple through my bones. I promised Lucas I'd protect him. I promised myself I'd stand up. I stood in the courtroom now. Photos lined up on the table before me like silent witnesses. I heard the shuffle of papers as Daniel's lawyer gathered her notes. I felt the judge's gaze settle on me. I saw curiosity and caution in her eyes. I took a deep breath. I opened my mouth to speak, and then I paused. I couldn't say the next words until the evidence spoke for itself. What would happen when the photos were revealed? And then the hush fell once more. Asterisk, asterisk. I felt my pulse hammer in my ears as I looked down at the first photo, Daniel's hand slipping beneath the loose floorboard in Lucas's bedroom. I felt the courtroom air thicken, as if the chandeliers themselves held their breath. I heard the faint click of the camera shutter echo off the marble walls. I pressed my fingertips to my lips, heart rattling like a loose gavel. I remembered that night in vivid shards. I had crept down the hallway after hearing laughter too low to be innocent. I had seen my son's door ajar, a sliver of light slicing through shadow. I had forced the door open and discovered Daniel crouched, fishing out a worn envelope. I had felt bile rise in my throat. I had seen Lucas's drawings, his treasure maps, his sketches of our family stained with coffee and folded into that envelope. I swallowed hard and met the judge's gaze. I heard Daniel's lawyer stand, smooth her skirt, and speak of family privacy. I felt my hands tremble on the folder. I took a breath. I steadied my voice. I whispered, "Your Honor, if I may." I felt the world tilt as I recounted Lucas's question the next morning. "Mom, why did Daddy hide my pictures?" I had frozen. I had hugged him close. I had whispered, "I don't know, baby, but we'll find out." I heard my own voice crack in court now. I touched the edge of the next photo. I watched jurors lean forward. I felt the weight of every pair of eyes on me. I revealed the timestamp, 11:47 p.m., June 12th, 2 days before I filed my motion. I felt a shiver ripple down my spine as I said, "He hid our son's memories." I remembered Lucas that morning, eyes swollen from tears, voice barely a whisper. He said they were trash. I had felt my world fracture in that moment, every promise of safety shattered. I saw the judge jot something in her notebook. I felt the courtroom's heartbeat sync with mine. Then came the betrayal I never saw coming. I heard Daniel's lawyer call a witness, his best friend, Mark. I felt my skin prickle as Mark took the stand. I watched him smile at Daniel, a mirror of loyalty. I watched him say, "I never saw anything unusual." I felt my throat constrict. I felt the cold grip of doubt tighten around my chest. I thought of my sister, Marisol, my ally. I scanned her seat. I felt panic climb my spine when I saw her frozen lips pressed tight. I felt a hawk-like stare from Daniel's lawyer as she whispered, "Is this the ally you promised?" I felt the courtroom's temperature drop. I gripped the edge of the bench. I forced myself to remember the proof I still held. I felt the folder shift under my fingers, the remaining photos waiting to speak. I closed my eyes and whispered, "You've got this." I remembered Lucas handing me the memory card. I remembered the hidden folder, inside unedited, irrefutable. I heard the judge's voice, "Counselor, proceed." I felt my heart erupt. I opened the next photo, Daniel's phone lying on the floorboard. Screen lit, recording the entire conversation between him and Mark. Proof of orchestration, proof of conspiracy. I felt the courtroom gasp. I saw jurors exchange glances. I felt the color drain from Daniel's face. I realized his carefully constructed defense was unraveling. I recalled the moment in my car, replaying that hidden audio. I felt my hands shake as I heard Daniel's voice say, "She's losing her mind, she'll say anything." I felt nausea as I realized how close I'd come to losing everything. I felt tears sting my eyes as I pressed save one final time. I met the judge's stare again. I saw curiosity and disbelief war behind her eyes. I pointed to the photo. "Your Honor, this recording was captured on his device, time-stamped, unaltered. It proves he conspired with Mark to discredit my sanity." I felt my voice sharpen. I felt the edges of my fear crumble. I watched Daniel sink into his seat. I saw his lawyer scramble through documents. I saw Marisol exhale, relief flooding her eyes. I felt my throat unclench. I felt hope sharp and bright flood my chest. Then came Lucas's voice, soft but clear, echoing in my mind. "Mummy, you're so brave." I felt tears spill down my cheeks as I whispered under my breath, "For you, baby." I felt resolve, harden like steel. I heard the judge clear her throat. I felt the hush settle. I felt every heartbeat slow, every breath crystallize. I took one final look at the photos, and then the world went quiet. What would the judge decide next? Asterisk, I felt the entire courtroom shift when I slid the final photo across the polished mahogany table. I saw the glint of the judge's glasses catch the overhead lights. I felt my pulse echo in my ears as I whispered, "This is the unedited audio transcript." I watched the clerk place it before the court reporter, fingers trembling. I remembered the night I first listened to that file in my car. I had parked beneath a lone street lamp, the engine's hum a faint lullaby. I pressed play and heard Daniel's voice, low and insidious. "She's unstable. We'll make sure they see it." I had gasped into the steering wheel. I had felt my hands go cold as he gave instructions to Mark. I had pressed record on my phone, tears blurring the words into a single refrain. "I can't believe you'd do this to your own wife." I looked up at the jury now. I saw their faces, some incredulous, some crestfallen. I felt the weight of each recorded word press upon me. Then I heard the judge's soft murmur, "Proceed with the audio playback." I closed my eyes and took a breath. I pressed a button on my phone. I heard the crackle of static, then Daniel's unmistakable tone. "She's been doubting herself. We need her to doubt more." "You're certain the photos will undermine her?" "Absolutely," Mark responded. "I'll handle her sister. She's fragile, won't stand up in court." "Good. Once the judge sees the timeline, they'll dismiss her." I felt my chest tighten. I felt my son's question from months ago echo in my mind. Why does Daddy lie about me? I clenched my fists under the table. I opened my eyes. I saw Daniel's jaw clench. I saw his lawyer's face blanch. I saw Marisol lean forward, her knuckles white on the bench. I saw the judge pause the recording. I watched her rub her temple, searching for calm. I heard her pen scratch as she wrote, "Conspiracy to mislead the court. Evidence of emotional abuse." I felt tears sting my eyes. I felt the prison of fear crack wide open. I rose to my feet, shoulders shaking. I whispered, "Your Honor, this proves not only manipulation, but coordinated defamation. My son's memories, my sanity are weaponized against us." I watched the judge inhale deeply. I heard the courtroom fall into a hush so heavy it felt like the air itself had weight. I felt the chairs press against my back. I felt the creaking floorboards settle beneath my feet. I remembered Lucas that morning, face pale, clutching his favorite blanket. He had asked me, "Will they believe me, Mummy?" I had knelt before him, heart laid bare, and whispered, "I will make them see." I met the judge's gaze again. I saw understanding flicker in her eyes. I saw compassion shimmer behind the stern mask. I heard her voice, calm but resolute. "Ms. Rivera, the court will take this into consideration." I felt my heart soar and then stall as she turned to Daniel's lawyer. "Counsel, do you wish to respond to this new evidence?" I held my breath. I tasted metal on my tongue. I watched Daniel's lawyer scribble furiously, her mouth set in a thin line. I saw Daniel's eyes, once confident, drift into panic. I felt the hush deepen until it felt like I could hear my own heartbeat. I thought of every sleepless night, every whispered worry. I thought of the moment when doubt nearly swallowed me whole. I thought of Lucas clutching my leg, tears in his eyes, begging me to protect him. I felt my knees go weak. I pressed my hand to the bench, willing myself to stay upright. I felt every scar of this battle pulse in my chest, the stolen memories, the whispered lies, the moments I'd felt utterly alone. Then, I heard the judge clear her throat. I felt the world tilt as she spoke. Given the new evidence indicating a deliberate scheme to undermine both the petitioner's credibility and parental fitness, this court finds cause to issue a protective order for the minor child. I felt the words strike my heart like a gavel. I felt tears spill down my cheek stairs. I hadn't allowed myself in weeks. I felt relief wash over me in icy waves. I felt the tension drain from my shoulders as if invisible hands had lifted a weight I didn't know I was carrying. I watched Daniel slump into his chair, face pale, eyes void of the smug certainty he'd worn for months. I saw his lawyer sink beside him, papers slipping from her grasp. I saw Marisol sob quietly, slipping from the gallery to wrap her arms around me. I walked to the rail, as though in a dream. I heard the shuffle of feet, my family moving toward me, proof that I was not alone. I felt Lucas's small hand slip into mine. I felt the warmth of his grip, the soft brush of his thumb. I looked down at him, tears blurring the world into soft focus. I whispered, "We did it, Lucas." He looked up with a shy smile and whispered back, "You're my hero, Mummy." And then, the gavel fell once more, sealing our victory. What would our new beginning look like? I felt the judge's gavel strike again, this time to signal the protective order's enactment. I heard its resonant echo ricochet through the high-ceilinged chamber, and I felt the tension that had lodged in my chest for months finally begin to unfurl. I pressed my trembling hand to my heart, as if to still its wild gallop. I'm safe now. I rose from my seat, my skirt rustling against the polished wood bench. I heard the soft shuffle of feet as the bailiff stepped forward to hand me the signed order. I felt the crisp paper slide into my fingers and the gravity of its weight settle into my bones. This isn't just paper, it's our freedom. I glanced at Daniel, the man I once loved now, seated at the defense table. Face pale, eyes hollow. I felt no triumph in his defeat, only a profound sadness for the man he'd become and the life that might have been. I blinked back tears as I watched him realize that his schemes had unraveled the very family he claimed to protect. I turned to Marisol, who had slipped into the aisle behind me. I felt her arm slide around my waist, her quiet sob vibrating against my side. I felt a hot surge of gratitude for her steady presence. I couldn't have done this without you. I leaned my head against her shoulder for a moment, drawing strength from her closeness, and then I pivoted toward Lucas, who stood by the gallery rail, gripping my sister's hand so tightly his knuckles were pale. I felt my heart twist as I saw the lingering fear in his eyes give way to cautious relief. I knelt beside him, feeling the coarse carpet rasp against my knees. I reached out and brushed a lock of hair from his forehead. I whispered, "It's okay now, baby." I felt his small hand close around mine, and I guided him down from the rail. I watched his shoulders relax ever so slightly as we walked toward the exit. We're on our way home. I heard the low hum of conversations as the courtroom began to empty. I felt the air grow warmer, more forgiving. I followed the bailiff out of the chamber and into the marbled hallway, where natural light spilled through arched windows. I inhaled deeply, savoring the scent of polished stone and fresh flowers from a nearby vase. I felt real, tangible sunlight for the first time in what felt like an eternity. And then I saw him, Mr. Patel, my defense attorney, waiting just outside the courtroom doors. I felt a wave of relief surge through me as he offered a small, tired smile. I met his gaze and shook his hand vigorously. I felt the tension drain further as he whispered, "You did it." I nodded, tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. I did it. I felt pride bloom in my chest, fierce, protective bloom shaped by every sleepless night, every trembling confession, every moment I doubted myself. I squeezed his hand and mouthed, "Thank you." I guided Lucas toward the courthouse exit. I felt the warm July sun wash over us as we emerged onto the steps. I shielded my eyes against the brightness, and I felt the rhythm of life return to me. The distant honk of car horns, the murmur of pedestrians, the flutter of birds in the nearby trees. This is real, Dot. And then I stopped on the top step and turned back for one last look at the courthouse. I felt the weight of its stone facade press into my memory, the place where our story nearly fractured, then found its justice. I felt a surge of determination. I'll remember this day forever. I led Lucas down the stone steps, each footfall echoing softly. I felt his grip tighten around my hand when a sudden breeze picked up, swirling his hair around his face. I bent down and straightened his collar, feeling a tender protectiveness wash over me. No more hiding, Dot. We reached the sidewalk, and I hailed a taxi. I felt the leather seat cool against my skirt as we climbed inside. I buckled Lucas into his car seat and settled beside him. I felt the engine roar as the driver pulled into traffic. "We're going home." And then I reached into my bag and pulled out the protective order, now neatly folded. I smoothed its edges with my fingertips as the taxi weaved through the city streets. I felt a fierce joy ignite inside my joy, mingled with exhaustion, relief mixed with vigilance. This is victory, but the journey continues. I looked over at Lucas through the rearview mirror. I saw his curious eyes studying the document in my hand. I felt a swell of affection as I caught his shy smile when he realized what I was holding. I whispered, "This is our promise, sweetheart. No more secrets." I parked outside our home at last. I felt the familiar facade greet me, the blue door, the flowering vine along the porch. I opened the door and stepped inside, Lucas at my heels. I felt the soft carpet beneath my feet, the warmth of our living room, the hum of the refrigerator beside the kitchen. We're safe here. And then I closed the door behind us and leaned against it, exhaling a long, shaky breath. I felt tears spill down my cheek, stares of relief, tears of triumph, tears for the new chapter ahead. What would our first night of freedom look like? Asterisk, asterisk. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass of our living room window as dusk settled over our home. I felt the soft glow of the street lamp spill across the carpet. I never thought I'd see safety through glass again. I cradled the protective order in one hand, Lucas's hand in the other. I felt the weight of every sleepless night lift, replaced by a cautious hope. I whispered to myself, I learned the hard way that truth doesn't need permission to be seen. I felt the lesson carve itself into my heart, that every quiet worry, every trembling doubt, every small voice must be heard, no matter how loud the world tells you to be silent. I felt a fierce pride in our resilience, in the power of proof, in a mother's promise kept. I closed my eyes and imagined the future. Bedtime stories without fear of hidden cameras. School mornings without hushed arguments. Evenings filled with laughter instead of lies. This is our new normal. I felt a fierce joy radiate from my chest, strong enough to guard us both. I turned to Lucas and saw his shy smile as he traced the lines of the order with his fingertip. I felt a swell of love so powerful it made my vision blur. I knelt beside him and brushed a kiss across his forehead. "We did it," I whispered, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. I rose, determination stealing my shoulders. Our story isn't over, it's just beginning. I walked to the camera I'd placed on the mantel earlier and hit record. I felt my voice steady as I spoke. If you've ever felt unheard, if you've ever fought for your child's safety, this is for you. Truth matters. Evidence matters. Your voice matters. I glanced back at Lucas, then directly into the lens. If you found strength in our story, please hit like, share this video so no one feels alone, and subscribe for more real-life courtroom confessions. Comment below, what's your truth that needs to be heard? I ended the recording, heart pounding, conviction blazing. I am heard. And then I walked into our future.